Alright guys, Silver Skull Gamer back again for part 2 of Leviathan Crusader assembly. And we're going to start on the waist, and I'm showing you the mechanical spine, which is really cool. Nice little detail. Um, I think it's a great piece to it. Give the giant robot a human looking spine. Uh, Clipping out the kind of the main structure of the legs and bottom torso there, which is the hip bones. And when I first saw those pieces, I thought it reminded me of an axle assembly for a remote control truck. But actually, that's where the ball joint goes for the spine to fit into. And this piece uses tension screws as well to set the tension for how stiff you want that spine to move back and forth in relation to the lower body. I kind of just use a toothpick to smooth out the glue, try to prevent it from squeezing out the edges. You don't want it to, you don't want to put glue too close to where the movable parts are and have it squeeze out and then seize up your movable parts. So you see right there, I'm testing out the ball joint. Make sure I didn't seize it up. Screw it in with the wife's screwdriver. Nice and tight. And now we're moving on. I got the had to cut away about 3 minutes there where I couldn't figure out how the hip bones go on. So here we're dry fitting the hip bones, making sure everything fits nice and snug. And I realized that I have the spine and upside down. There you go. Swap it around. If you put it in upside down, the large vertebrae will prevent the spine from moving back. So you want the small vertebrae at the bottom. And here I'm going to glue the halves together with generous amounts of super glue, because don't want this coming apart on me. It's a pretty important piece of the model where a lot of stress points, I guess you could say, between the legs and the spine. And then here we're unclipping the pieces for the shoulder assemblies. There's quite a few pieces. It's got, what, at least 2 axes of movement for each shoulder. And there's a lot of similar looking pieces, so you have to follow the instructions fairly carefully. Make sure you're looking at your sprue labels and the part numbers. As you see, I'm taking my time here trying to follow the directions and make sure I'm getting all the right pieces. Like I said, this model, you need to have some previous modeling experience. I mean, really, so far the hardest model I've put together is a Games Workshop Land Raider, just because of the fitment is kind of not that great. It's always fun trying to get the top of that Land Raider on top. So, but it does have movable pieces, but nothing like this. So, you know, be prepared for a modeling challenge. Here we're starting to assemble the shoulders. Get a first tension screw in there. I think I realized, yep. A lot of these pieces you gotta You end up trying to hold like 4 pieces together and then screw them. So there we go. I got it that time. Because the instructions are a little, I think they'll probably get improved. I'm actually going to do a video response to Dreamforge games and go over the instructions, and there's just a couple errors I've found. And I know he's identified a couple of them already. I think he's offered updated instructions off his blog website. But actually in the shoulder assembly, there's actually a piece that's not even um, identified. And I think they just show it, all of a sudden it magically just shows up. Yeah, so there's a piece that goes in between F2 and F4. Or actually, the instructions show F2 and F3 is the same piece. They left out the picture for, I believe it is F2. Anyways, so I'll be doing a kind of in-depth video over the instructions to maybe help you guys out if you have these current instructions, and um, maybe Mark from Dreamforge isn't aware of some of the other mistakes yet. So, but the shoulders took a while. There's a lot of pieces to the shoulders to get all those axes of movement and everything working. So then here we're coming back to the shoulders and building the mounting plate that actually is going to go into the upper torso. It locks into the shoulder and the upper torso. I'm just pressing it down to try to get everything nice and tight. The one good thing about this kit is most of the pieces, like the legs, the shoulders, everything is usable on either side. They're identical. So it's not like, the right shoulder has to be built separately from the left shoulder. No, you just build 2 identical shoulder joints, and then you can put them on either side. So that's good, because there's so many pieces. It'd probably be pretty easy to screw up one side or the other if they had unique pieces. But luckily, a lot of stuff is just duplicated, and you just twist it the other way to use it on the other side. So here we're unclipping the main torso, or upper torso, where the shoulders will lock in. You see those half moon shapes. And there will be another ball joint to go in where the spine locks in to the upper body as well, which you're seeing right here. Well, took it off camera for some reason. Anyways, probably petting my dog. So I decided trying to fit like I said, the shoulder joints, or lock rings, I guess you could call them. Trying to figure out how they go. So, like I said, you're going to be doing a lot of dry fitting building this monster of a model, because you do not want to glue something in place and then have to try to bust it apart without breaking anything. Of course, then again, luckily there's screws for a lot of this stuff, so you can just unscrew it and screw it back together like I've had to do a couple times. Speaking of screws, actually in these joints right here, my screwdriver was too fat to actually get all the way down in there. So not only do you need a screwdriver, you need to have kind of a skinny Phillips head for these pieces right here. As you can see, I grab a green stuff sculpting tool. It's got a little flat end, little flat round end, and I'm sticking that in, jamming that down in there, and finish trying to get the tension on these screws. And at this point, I start getting confused. Well, I put the last ball joint for the spine, the top of the spine. We're gonna screw that in, but you'll see in a bit where I start getting confused. You really don't know what's the front and what's the back of this thing yet. That'll come in a little later. So no glue required in this part. Just screw it in. And these pieces are where the main torso pistons are you're gonna push them in and then twist them, and then they'll lock in place. And I'm looking at the back piece instructions, which um, unfortunately, I guess that's something else I'll mention in my instruction review, is there should be a notation or something that says like stop at this point if you have the alternate cooling capacitors, which everybody got for free if they were a Kickstarter pledger. But unfortunately, the instructions don't incorporate those. So once you glue um, these 4 little cooling units or something into the back, you can't use the alternate capacitors. So, which I kind of wanted to do because honestly, they look more 40K-ish, and I'm going to be using this first Leviathan for 40K Titan proxy. But and see these little bits right here, I just immediately glue them in, and then I don't realize until much later that, oops, now I can't use the um, alternate cooling capacitor or capacitor coolers. I'm stuck with the steampunk kind of exhaust stack things. But it's fine. No big deal. I'm going to modify them a little bit in a later video as soon as I find some plastic tubing big enough to use as um, exhaust pipes. And here we're just dry fitting the back piece. This is where I'm like, oh, what's the front? What's the back? Can't figure it out. Like turning it every which way, but the right way. It's like, oh, there we go. Okay. It's a little loose fitting. There's really no like tabs or studs and holes to kind of line that up. So just be careful when you go to glue on that back piece that you don't slide it too far to the left or right, because it is going to move around a bit. You're going to have to kind of line it up freehand and hold it till it glues in place. And you can see I'm still trying to take some tension out of the shoulders because it wasn't lining up right. There was still a gap, so I had to tighten some of the screws even more to take some gaps out of the seams so parts would fit together tightly. So just using plenty of glue on this back piece, and then get the kind of exposed fusion cell glued on. I believe it's called the Iron Core, which is going to be the name of the game or the rule set that will be coming out eventually. I think it's called Iron Core, and I believe that's what fuels these Leviathans, is the Iron Core. I really need to read up on the website a little more so I know what I'm talking about. And we're just scraping one of the 2 last ball joints that go on the hips. So, but you don't really have to scrape the mold lines. I'm just obsessed with them. I wasn't sure how tight a fit they were going to be in the legs, but honestly, the leg joints on these ball joints is pretty loose, so mold lines aren't going to have any effect on the fitment. It's pretty tight fit, as all the ball joints on the posts are, the ones with the spine. So I pressed it against the table there to make sure you get it all the way tightly or snug. Because if your ball joint ends up sticking out further, um, people are going to notice because your leg's going to be so far out from the hip joint. So don't be worried about breaking it. Just press it nice and firm until it'll give way and jam all the way in, and it'll be good to go. So I'm just dry fitting it there, and like I said, it's a pretty loose fit. You'll have to glue the legs. He couldn't think of a way to make those adjustable without radically redesigning the hip joints, which I can understand. So I hope you guys stay tuned for the next installment, as this thing will really start to take shape. So please comment, rate, and subscribe. See you guys later. Thanks.